Hello, Lenox and Parker. This is your editor-in-chief, Christal Jordan Jennings, and I'm excited today because we are starting a brand new segment called Chapter and Verse. We thought, with Lenox and Parker, we really wanted to expand and start having more conversations with authors because you guys know we believe that literature is currency, right? It is our currency. And so Chapter and Verse will give you an opportunity to meet a lot of today's brightest authors and have a chance to kind of get to know a little bit about them and hear their perspectives on their book. So with this premiere episode, I am so excited for today's guest. It is Minda Honey. She is an American author, essayist, columnist, and editor as well. And she is best known for the book that we're going to discuss today, which is The Heartbreak Years. But before we get into that, I want to make sure that you guys know that she is the Black Joy editor at Record News. I love that. I need to ask her a little bit about what all encompasses being a Black Joy editor. There she is. And then also she created Taunt, an independent indie magazine based in Louisville. She has contributed essays to the Washington Post, The Guardian, Teen Vogue, the Oxford American Long Reads, and formerly penned a popular dating and politics advice column for Louisville's LEO Weekly. And so please help me welcome the author of this amazing book, The Heartbreak Years, her memoir, Miss Minda Honey.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about this new series. We need more book coverage desperately, and especially Black authors to connect with our audiences.
Absolutely.
So I truly appreciate you all launching this initiative.
Well, I'm excited. And we really, like I said, I really believe that literature it is currency. And I think we don't always appreciate it. I'm a former Barnes and Noble community relations coordinator. So I was around books and around authors and, just love that resurgence that we had like in the 90s. And so that will come back. But I want to ask you about your column, Politics and Dating. And I those two topics, I don't think could be further apart in my mind, but you actually bring a lot of parallels with them with this book. So I'm wondering which came first. Was it the column or was this the inspiration for your memoir?
Yeah, so just like a couple of things. I am no longer the editor of Black Joy. Unfortunately, I was laid off last July, but Star Dunnigan, who is the founder of Black Joy, carries on. And if you're looking for positive, uplifting Black stories, absolutely subscribe to that newsletter. She built that list brick by brick. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that people kind of see dating as a bit of a fluffy topic. And the reality is that, my book takes place, I'm dating, it's about dating in my 20s set against the backdrop of the Obama years. And just as I was coming of age at 23, our nation was also changing and thinking and speaking differently about class, consent, race, sexuality, and gender. And dating is actually the perfect vehicle for discussing these shifting cultural norms because it sits at the intersection of them all. Like you cannot be dating without talking about consent. You cannot be dating without talking about sexuality and gender. Class comes up a lot when we're talking about dating. Colorism, I touch on that in the book. And so dating actually provides this entry point for this cultural analysis. And so initially, some of these pieces I began writing in real time, when me and my ex broke up when I was 23. And then when I went to go get my MFA, my professor, Layla Lalami, was like, you have to be able to connect your work to these larger cultural narratives and like what's happening in the world at the same time. And so that really just unlocked so many things for me around what I was dating through, and also the Obama years, like I don't know that I would have had the same dating experience if I was 23 in Trump's America. I don't know if I would have been so comfortable being drunk on a dance floor for 90% of my 20s if I was living through these times right here. So, so I think it just kind of like takes some time, age, and perspective to connect the dots because like Baldwin says, you think you're the only person who's ever experienced heartbreak and then you read a book.
That's true. So true. That's true.
So I want my book to be that book.
To be that book that would just let you know, hey, we've all experienced it. And actually the first, when you first are introduced, you introduce the reader to what you have going on. A breakup is very pivotal. It's like one of the first things that happens. And I was actually surprised just because that it was so final. It just didn't feel like after traveling together and being together so young, they would travel across the country and then, have this very final breakup because of the living space. So before I get into my questions that we have curated, I'm wondering, like, because at that age, you all had been together for a substantial part of your, coming into your adulthood.
Yeah, almost 7 years. Yeah,
that is a lot at 23, right? So that, I mean, contextually, like that age at 23, being with someone for 7 years is much different than being 40 and being with someone for 7 years, or even like, so I'm wondering, like, if that breakup, do you, now looking back on it with the perspective that you have now, do you feel like it happened too late? It should have happened before, or do you think it was right? It happened exactly when it needed to, when you were in this total, a different coast, away from family, away from friends. So that breakup really enabled you to get to know yourself in a different way, where if it had happened maybe before, it may not. I don't know. What do you think that did for your coming
yeah. So the original title for the book was supposed to be Anthology of Assholes, and my publisher didn't want profanity in the title. But, it was going to be like, hey, I dated a bunch of assholes, and sometimes I was an asshole too. And that's kind of what I realized about this relationship with my high school sweetheart. Like, initially, I was so upset with him about the living situation and him not telling me. But then I realized I was not an easy person to tell things to. Like, I was not very receptive to information I did not want to hear. And so I think so eventually I was able to just be like, you know what, it's your 20s. So many of us are assholes at that age. And maybe you have the right to be an asshole. You should be selfish about your life at that age. But ultimately, I do think, like, I'm so thankful that we moved to California, because had we stayed in Kentucky, we probably would have gotten married and had kids and been divorced by 30, because so many people from where we're at were getting married at that age. Having kids or anything like that. We were all just being young and wild and free. And so I think this was really a relationship that lasted a lot longer than it should have, because of, one, being in Kentucky, and two, because it wasn't like he was a terrible person. Like, like, he was a really nice, caring, compassionate guy who was there for me on the other side of this, like, sexual trauma that I experienced very early on. And so, and I'm like, a nice, caring, wonderful person. So there wasn't really a real, like, big reason to break up, other than we just were not compatible, even though we loved each other and we, like, got along. But long term, when you looked at our lives, or even if you looked at the way, like, the path my life has gone down versus the path his life has gone down, like, if we had met later in life, we would not have dated. It was just kind of like a timing thing. And so I think that we would have broken up much sooner, but our lives were just so enmeshed when we were younger. We had all the same friends. We lived in this small city together. We had broken up off and on, on occasion. But, like, yeah, it was something about being in California that just kind of made this very final.
Yeah, that was jarring for me as a reader. I was like, wow, I felt like that it needed to happen, but for it to happen with you being so far away from everybody. But then I think it all worked out as it was supposed to. Before I get
really
into
did.
I do think, I love the point that you made about when there's a good person. I remember in college, my girlfriends and I would talk about, okay, I like this guy, we're in a relationship, but because I don't really know if I like him as much as I thought I did, but because he's such a nice person, I don't really have a reason to break up with him.
Right.
Don't make me feel like a bad guy. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, when you're young, that idea of, I want to be appreciative of someone who treats me well, but this also may not really be what I want. What would you say to girls or young men in that space? That's a very uncomfortable space.
Yeah, I mean, when I've, like, had conversations with young women in college, and they're, like, in that kind of same space where they're, like, going hemming and hawing about whether or not to stay with their boyfriends, I always tell them, I'm like, look, if you are in a stable, happy, loving relationship at this age, fine, stay in it. I'm not going to encourage you not to be in it, because look, the dating world is insane. But if you are questioning and you're, like, uncertain, I can tell you right now that I do not know a single grown-ass adult who regrets breaking up with their high school or college partner. Like I don't know anybody who's just like, wow, I should not have let that person I was with at 21 go. Like, you know, and it's not necessarily because they were a terrible person, but it's because you've grown so much and you're such a different person. And that person is not necessarily someone who could grow with you. But like I said, if you're happy with that person and you all are figuring out how to grow together, that's fine. Like there's so many different paths, and none of those paths are necessarily easier than the other. I know people who met in college who were married and they had like a different set of challenges than people who broke up in college and have gone down different paths. Like there's heartbreak awaiting you regardless
at wherever turn you take, right?
Packaged differently, you know?
Right. Yeah. That's so true. So in many ways, this book feels like an ode to the importance of young love. That period that is often dismissed. Why do you think that we are so dismissive in the society of young love? People try to make it like, oh, it's not that serious, or you'll get over it. But in the moment, and we all have been there and felt that, it is so real, and it definitely is. It's just a necessary thing. So why do you think that we're so dismissive once we're past it of that very, very unique period of time?
I think this like movement towards gentle parenting is going to ripple out in these other ways of just being more gentle in general. Because like when you see someone with a child that's frustrated and people are like, oh, this child's acting up, they're not blah blah blah, and parents are like, no, he's new here, like he's never like it feels big, like these feelings are big because this is the first time they're having those feelings. And that is no different than when you were in your teens or in your 20s and you're experiencing heartbreak for the first time. Like I think once you're older, it can be easy to forget, or you could just have like a trauma block on it of like, you don't want to remember.
I don't want to go back.
Emotionally destabilizing that was. And so it can be easy to forget how strongly you felt things, whether you wanted to feel them that strongly or not. And so I do feel like we need to give grace to our younger selves and grace to younger people in general who are having these really big feelings for the very first time. You know, I had somebody ask me like if my heartbreak years are over, and I was like, well, I'm still in the dating pool, so no. But I was like, but in a way, yes, because heartbreak, I know that I can survive heartbreak now. I've survived the end of the world many times at this point, so it will never be destabilizing to me as it once was in my youth. So in that way, like, yeah, my heartbreak years are behind me, and you know, thank God.
Yeah,
but there are people going through it now. So
yeah, I would challenge that though, because as a woman, a more seasoned sister, and even being around.
Wait, how old are you?
I just know, Minda, that I'm a lot more seasoned than you. But
I'm 41. Okay.
Again, Minda, I am disappointing you to believe me when I say I am a more seasoned woman. But I hear, you know, I was having a conversation.
You don't look it. You don't.
Well, thank you, girl. Thank you. I was listening to an interview that Jennifer Lewis did, right? And she's a more seasoned woman, just this amazing treasure that we have. And she was talking about, you know, being in a relationship and falling in love. And when I hear the idea of like, are your heartbreak years over? I think that at any point that you are truly open to love, there is still the possibility of heartbreak, and it happens in a much different way, right? So you know the world is not going to end, but you could still feel that way if you.
Oh yeah, like I'm thinking about the difference between capital H heartbreak and lowercase h heartbreak. So you can absolutely still experience heartbreak. It's just not going to be world ending in the same way that it was in your youth, because now like in your youth, it felt like if you lost this person, if you lost this relationship, you would have nothing. At this age, hopefully, you know that whatever you may lose in life, you still have yourself. Like you still have yourself to hold on to. You are fully formed in who you are in a way that you just are not at that age. And so you always have something to hold on to at this age, regardless of how much it hurts.
And I think that's also a healthy person, right? Because if you're not in a great space, and I think we kind of in our life, you know, health, being in a great place with self-care and self-actualization probably waxed
Yes.
wanes, you know what I mean? So, but that's interesting. And I would love to hear your perspective, maybe like 10, 15 years down the road. Like, is that, because I see so many people that you would think, oh, you should know that love is just this thing that makes us feel young and vulnerable. And sometimes it can feel very much like the world is over, even when it's really not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I love that. So let's go to the beginning of the book. So I talk about it's very this relationship, it really kind of sets the tone for what we see you go through, throughout the book. But it starts with you leaving everything that's familiar behind and going to the, La La Land, California, with a high school boyfriend. Looking back, was the road trip the beginning of the love story, or was it the beginning of your journey back to yourself? Were you cognizant of like the fact that this is like, I'm leaving, I can potentially be becoming another person, we're on this journey together? What was going through your mind as you guys actually made that trip from Louisville, very, very different, to California?
Yeah, I mean, like I kind of cover this a little bit, but we had our differences while on the road trip. So it really kind of sets you up for like, oh, I don't know if they're gonna make it, because we were just like so different personality wise. But and like I didn't really get into it as much in the book, but we had like left Louisville and we were living together in Cincinnati, and I had like left my job, and so we were having all these financial challenges that I was just kind of like, oh, this isn't really somebody that I can go through a difficult time with. I don't know.
Right.
So there'd been kind of like hints of that through the
Mhm.
last few years of the relationship. And so when we got to California and my housing was suddenly in jeopardy, that just really kind of made me flash forward to like, this is the person that's supposed to be by my side. Like, what if I get cancer? Like, what if
Yeah.
like we have kids, and like is this the person that is going to be able to see me through a hardship? And so
Right.
ultimately that answer was no. And I don't know that I had a sense of all of that on the
Mhm.
road trip. There was just kind of
Mhm.
like this excitement of like starting this new life in California. I was also unaware that I was going to be going on this self-actualization journey, because to me, like I was like, oh, I know who I am. I have a 5-year plan, like
Mhm.
these. And so it was just kind of like little by little, it's like, oh, you don't have like this corporate job you went to school to get, you don't have
Mhm.
this relationship that you've invested 6-7 years in, and oh, like the world isn't the place that you thought it was going to be. Like I was coming of age out of context. Like I was a southerner in Southern California. I'd come from Louisville, where everybody knew whose grandbaby I was, to to this place where like black people don't even like nod at each other. So
Yeah.
it was just like this
Yeah.
very, all of a sudden I didn't have all these reflections of like
Mhm.
reflecting back to me who I was. And so
Right.
in a way that's scary, but also in a way it's freeing, because then you get to decide who you
Yeah.
are. So I think one of the best things I ever did in life was really kind of like leaving that bubble at 20
Mhm.
and just like being opened up to like this whole big vast world out there.
Yeah, you seemed, just reading it, it seems like you made the adaptation a lot easier than one would assume, coming from, because those are very different, polarizing places. And then just having to kind of redefine who you are. This is not the job that I wanted to be in, and this is not the place that I wanted to be in. Were you aware of the work that you were doing in real time? Because it seems like you're just.
Oh, I absolutely was not. I was not aware. I was drunk on a dance floor. I was not aware of anything. I was just like living like, I
Having to.
don't know, like
Yeah.
I was just on go 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 mode. Whatever two brain cells I had in my 20s, like I just like I wasn't really thinking about these like larger big picture things.
Yeah.
I was very very focused on trying to get my life back on track with like this blueprint of like being married by a certain age, having a certain type
Right.
of career, owning a home, like all of those
Right.
things, and not really pausing to think about like, oh, but is this the life I want? Like, is that
Right.
actually how I'm trying to live? Like
Mhm.
what is it? And so it really took life life stubbornly not giving me
Mhm.
what I thought I wanted to really have to finally sit down and think about what I actually wanted, and then
Yes.
going for those things in a very intentional, very risk taking kind of manner. But yeah, I had, like, I mean, even in my early 20s, like I said, I wrote some of these pieces in real time, and I didn't even realize I was like writing a book. I would just go to this writing group where everybody else was like in their 60s, and I would be like, me and my boyfriend broke up and I want to kill myself. And like after, I don't know, 3 months of me joining, they stopped meeting. And I'm pretty sure it was me. Pretty sure they were like, we cannot do this with her anymore. But you know, I kept living and I kept writing, and then like this kind of like story, these narratives began to emerge, and that kind of took some of the weight off of me, because then instead of it being like, what's wrong with me, it's like, oh, actually there are structures and systems in place that make it challenging for Black women to find love.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Throughout this memoir, readers will meet several men who seem to represent a different season of your 20s, and maybe like what you wanted at that point, or maybe what you thought you wanted. Was there one relationship that completely changed the trajectory of your life, even if it wasn't the longest or deepest love, like one that made you think, okay, this is how I want to be treated? I'm thinking there that, you know, that's kind of the feeling I got from one of the characters. Like, I like how he treats me. This may not be something that can go long term or doesn't look like that, but I love this part. Is there one that stands out that really kind of defines something special for you?
No, I see the kind of like life defining, character defining acts, not as the men, but the release of those men. By letting go of the men, and each of the men actually kind of represent like a big idea, right? Whether or not they were going to live up to that idea, that's what I was like projecting onto them. And so each time I had to learn to let go in order to grasp onto what I actually wanted or what I actually needed, because those men were never going to be that thing, and then that was also never going to be the thing that was like right for me. So releasing them in is what, you know, changed the course of my life, because that's kind of the lesson I had to learn, because I clung to my high school sweetheart for so many years, for so long, because I was just like, you know, I was living in the wake of sexual trauma, and so I had to learn how to let go.
Yeah. You know what? I actually learned something reading that, and you, how you were able to kind of explain after the relationship was over why that relationship was safe, felt safe for you. That's really huge. How the characteristics that your high school sweetheart had after coming out of trauma, you know, you were trying to make sure that you could control things, and he actually, you know, kind of allowed that. That was huge to me, because I see so many women in those types of relationships, and you could get comfortable there. Do you feel like that relationship really challenged you and who you were, or do you feel like was the safety the biggest thing, or was there some challenge there?
I think it was the safety was the biggest thing. I don't think challenge was like possible within that relationship, because we just weren't communicating with each other. You know,
Right.
if he had been like communicating his needs in the relationship, then it would have been a challenge for me to either communicate back or figure out how to give my partner what they needed. But because we were both just kind of like, me very like overtly aggressively being like, this is what I want, this is how I need my life to look, and him kind of passive aggressively and like covertly making different decisions, pulling the relationship in different ways. And so, yeah, so the challenge, you know, it was challenging in that it was like kind of a power struggle, but it wasn't challenging in that it was like forcing me to grow as a person.
Yeah, that part. That was really interesting, because I've seen, you know, and gone through trauma myself, and then there are certain partners that can feel safe after that, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily are the best partner for you. It means you probably need to
Yeah.
heal, but you don't know that. You know, you're trying to figure that out. So I thought that was awesome that you were able to articulate that, because I've seen that pattern and never really understood why that, you know, what is that? And I realized that because of the trauma, you do look for someone that does that. And it's, but it's not always helping us to stretch and grow. So this story unfolds during the rise of social media and online dating. It feels like you kind of introduced that before people were doing this online. There's a lot of people now sharing their dating experiences during, you know, in real time, but this is kind of before that started. How much do you think that particular era shaped the choices your younger self made in love? And would the story have been different if it took place in 2026?
Oh, yeah. I think it would be really different if it took place in 2026, just because Gen Z is so different. You know, they're drinking significantly less, they're hooking up
Mhm.
significantly less, they're dating
Mhm.
significantly less. They are figuring out how to socialize on the other side of a pandemic. Like, they are
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
so completely different than us. Like,
Yeah.
early aughts, sweaty, pressed up against each other on the dance floor, making out,
Yeah.
shots,
Love
shots,
them.
shots, shots,
Yeah.
shots, shots. Like, it was just like such an entirely different world.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, so I do think it would be a different story, but I think that there could be like a different narrative with the same sort of emotional through
Mhm.
line undergirding
Mhm.
it. But
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah, no, it was a different world. It was a different time. I have this refrain in the book that I was like,
Mhm.
it was a time before, and so it's
Mhm.
like a time before Amazon same day delivery, is a time before Uber, is a time before swipe apps.
Right.
Just to
Right.
remind people, just to
Yeah,
remind
because it is.
people.
You forget, even though I was definitely aware and dating way before that, but because we're focused on what's happening now, you can forget how different that landscape was. I wanted to ask you this because as a Black woman who definitely have my own challenges with dating and in different spaces. I remember for my generation, and I'm about 10 years older than you, so there was this idea that there might have been like scarcity, right? So
Yeah.
we were like, okay, well, when you get to a certain level, you go to college, there may not be a partner for you. And so when I'm reading that, I'm like, she doesn't seem like she's afraid of there not being, a potential partner. You didn't seem to operate in the scarcity mindset that I think my generation, we definitely were very aware that there may be like two, men that have degrees and are capable of actually being a equally yoked partner. Do you feel did that affect you at all? Because it didn't feel that way reading it. It felt like you were very much in the moment. Okay, I met him, but there never seemed to be this under this kind of like tension of what if there's no one out there that would be a good potential, for me? What if there, especially in a place like California, a lot of times, men of color, they're not dating women of color, or they're not dating.
Yeah.
So so on top of the fact that there's already, all these different things that we know in our culture, from prison to, alternative lifestyles, that kind of pull away from that dating pool. Did you feel a sense of, kind of fear of there not being a potential partner?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had girlfriends who were already in their early to mid 30s who were like kind of giving us the
Hmm.
long view down the road. We'd seen the statistics, and
Hmm.
prior to the book coming out, but after I had written the book, I did a piece for Anscape called "The Lies Told About Black Women's Love Lives," and so
Hmm.
I like interviewed a series of Black women around these myths, because we kept hearing the same statistic about this like high percentage of Black women who were single and like unwed, and the reality was like, oh, we're just on a different timeline as our white peers, and
Right.
that many Black women who do want to get married will do so. It's just going to be later in life.
Hmm.
Like, the milestones are hit differently, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And then,
Hmm.
through researching this piece, I realized I was like, oh, this is a conversation that's been happening for decades. Like,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
isn't specific to my generation. And so,
Hmm.
um, yeah, so that was something that was certainly hanging over us. And that was
Hmm.
also part of me realizing like, oh, it's not just like, oh, why can't I find somebody? It's like, oh, there's not enough somebody's out there. And I
Hmm.
think maybe that doesn't come through as clearly in the book, because I was like, I had a roster 7 or 8
Hmm.
deep. And so I
You did
kind of
have a
knew
roster, Minda.
those were
I was
just
like, girlfriend is living a whole different thing. I remember watching, like, CNN had this thing on the state of the Black woman when I was in college, get ready, and Oprah said the numbers, like the numbers just aren't there. So we were just like frightened. So when I'm reading this and I'm like, Minda has a whole roster they are coming and going. She's replacing them. It's not, I loved it.
And those were just the ones that made the book. Like there was a lot that didn't make the book. So I think, so it was just kind of like, I think I say at one point in the book, like, yeah, your soulmate might end up being hard to find, but the next person who wants to ruin your life will be right along in the next 10 minutes. So I had an abundance of men who were like willing to show up and be life destroying for me. But you know, like actual partners, like not so much. And I think once I got older and I became like choosier about how I spent my time, who I spent my time with, that's when things really began to feel and look very dire.
Right. I didn't expect you to say dire, but I do understand.
Oh, it's dire.
I do understand. Yes.
That's not hyperbole.
Yeah. No, it's not. Do you think that the biggest attraction, like in the book, it feels like, and I know a lot of times as women, this idea of a man choosing you, right? Is sometimes, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm wondering, do you feel like you were in control, or do you feel like for some of your datings, it feels like a guy would present interest and it's like, well, okay, you know, do you feel like you were choosing or you were waiting to be chosen?
I think I was waiting to be chosen. I think that happens a lot throughout the book. And even for like a significant portion of my life, when people would be like, oh, what's your type? I was like, I don't really have a type, but I know whose type I am. So like, you know, and there is this desire to feel chosen, to feel supremely desired above everyone else. But I think the reality is that somebody could like make you feel that way and that their intentions not be pure. And you really do have to start considering, like, you know, there were just like so many men that I wrote about in this book where I was just like so heartbroken, so upset that they were rejecting me. And then when I stopped to think about it, I was like, wait, but do I really like this person? Do I really want this? Because it was more of like an ego thing, like, oh, I lowered my standards and I did all this, and then they rejected
How dare
me.
him? How dare him not?
And it's like, well, why did I put myself in position to be rejected by somebody who I thought was like beneath me? Like that, I played myself.
Yeah, that's
heartbreak
true.
Begins with self-betrayal most of the time.
Oh, that was big. That was, as Oprah would say, a tweetable moment. That was really good because it is. And I think a lot of times women, we don't talk enough about women's egos, right? Because there is such a thing. Like you said, I've lowered, given him this great honor, right? And how dare he not?
And we've been instructed to lower our standards. It's oh, well, like you told me to lower my standards, I did, and then this happened to me. And there's also, I feel like when you're good, you feel entitled to certain things from certain people. Like, oh, well, I was this perfect, I did all the quote unquote things that a good woman does. I'm entitled to being treated well. And then that also means you're entitled to feeling pristine and being the victim if something doesn't work out. Like it wasn't your fault, right? So when it then comes to you having to choose a person, then that's taking responsibility for some of it. That's taking accountability for some of that. And that's scarier. I know a lot of people, and I've been in this situation too, where like the first time you date somebody who's like emotionally healthier than you are, and you're the problem, and it's like, oh wait, no, I want to go back to dating people who I'm more emotionally intelligent.
Yes,
I don't want to be the one that
I don't want to be challenged. I don't want to have to work. But that is so true. I think that there's this conversation on social media about women not being accountable, and at first I thought there was no basis to. I'm like, men are, but then I started listening. I was like, ugh. I do think that idea of wifey material and being a good girl, I have found that the narrative of the good girl gets the good marriage is 100% false.
Yeah.
And it's very disappointing. You kind of lose find that you have put a lot of eggs in a basket that really does not exist, especially once you get to an age where everything balances out. Because who is a good girl, at 41, at 45, at 50? What does that mean?
Yeah. But also, how many of us had like difficult friends in our 20s that, these men were trying to marry, and it's like, well, I'm easygoing. Like, why? And it's like, because literally the only people that want to date her are the people who want to put up with her bullshit. So she's weeded everyone else out. Whereas I've made it easy for people to show up with their bullshit and then hang around for as long as they like.
That's a good point. That is a good point.
So be who you are, demand what you want, and then if nobody wants to be with you, fine. But you also are not just like letting people who don't actually want to be with you, but who would like to waste your time, hang around as well. Like that's the trade-off.
Right. The wasting of the time is because I do believe I guess I'm a hopeful romantic. I do believe that love is attainable, but I think you have to have a more realistic outlook on it, and that you know, a lot of your love journey is in your own you are responsible for it, right? So it's like you can't just kind of go with the flow and then say, but I keep these men are just hard. No, you have to take control and say, you know what, just like I understand that I'm accountable when it comes to work and all these different things, I'm accountable for showing up for myself and making sure I don't waste time with someone who really doesn't deserve a shot, you know, or
because somebody can be terrible, but you determine how long they're terrible to you, because you don't have to keep, I said it in the book, I was like, I don't have to have perfect attendance for the fuckery. Like, why do I keep showing up? And the reason why I won't settle is because I have friends, I have, you know, my sister, my brother-in-law, I have these women in my life who are partnered with great men. So that's like, I know it's possible. I know they exist. And that's why I refuse to settle, because I don't want to settle. And I got to bring this dud to all the family functions while I watch everybody else be in real love.
Real love. And then the one shows up and it's like, oh man, I've got this one. I need to get rid of him. And that's not easy to do. So, because I think when the longer you stay in a bad situation, the more you prolong what could possibly be for you. So,
or even just your peace, like even if it's just like being solo, the peace becomes worth so much. The value just skyrockets.
And it shows up in how you take care of yourself. It shows up in how you, just your energy, your face, your edges, all of that, you know, the peace shows up there.
Yeah, I saw that TikTok trend where it was just like these women showing like these before and afters of the,
I saw it,
and I literally gasped at some of these women, because I was like, whoa.
Yeah, but I think you don't know until you step back from it, right? So you don't know, you
get used to the chaos, and then it's quiet and you're just like, oh wait, I actually don't like that.
And that's being in survival mode, you can't be your best self, you know what I mean? So you're just going along with it. But as readers,
you know, we're part of the first generation of women who financially can afford to make different choices. We are not financially reliant on a man, so we don't have to compromise our peace in the same way.
Right. And I think that's a good thing, because you can make decisions based on love. You really can, as opposed to, it's really opposite. People think, oh, well, women are just wanting money now. No, because we are more financially independent, and you have the ability to have a bank account and do all these things that you couldn't do before. Now you really have the responsibility to pick a partner that really, you know, that feeds the side of you that is just emotion and love. You don't have to have someone because of what they are able to provide, or to stay, you know, to stay alive, you know, to live. As readers, we often root for people to find the one. But by the final page, I found myself rooting for you to just find yourself as opposed to the one. Was that always the story that you intended to tell, or did that revelation kind of happen during the process of writing?
That was during the process, because typically people write these dating memoirs and then the last chapter, they found love by the end of the book. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I've been working on this book for a few years. I'm sure like I will have found my person by the end of that did not happen. So then I got to the end of the book, like, you know, I was like, oh, I got to write a whole new chapter for the end of this book. And so, you know, and the funny thing is that like that chapter, the epilogue, it's, you know, some people call it a millennial waiting to exhale. I get the most feedback about that chapter. Like it just resonated so deeply with so many people, and it really is just kind of about the love that we have in our friendships, how we're not really like promised romantic love, and so you having to kind of choose yourself and choose a kind of happiness regardless. Like you can be upset, you can like, but there are always things that you're going to be upset about in life. You didn't get that job, you didn't do this, you like, you know, you didn't find up, like there are going to be these things, but that doesn't mean that like there aren't other avenues to joy to find its way into your life. And so being able to recognize that just was probably like the greatest gift of my 30s.
I like that. And I think that gift can be given to women at any age, because trust me, there are women still seeking and still in that, on that journey, you know, well past 40, well, I'm learning well past 50 and beyond. It's just a personal, you know, personal journey. My last question for you, I've enjoyed this so much. I talk a lot about relationships. And I think because you know, a lot of our demographic is women. And I think that's, you know, it's relatable to women at any point in their life. What was the most, I guess, like when you think back on this process, the process of writing this book and all the experiences that led to that, what is like the most delicious memory that you have from this process or from the process of the book?
Oh, you know, I feel like when you go out on book tour, it's like that old TV show, like This Is Your Life, and they like bring out all these people from different chapters. That's what going on book tour was like. So it's people from all eras of your life who are so excited for you that you've accomplished this major milestone, this big goal in your life, and you're going to be in their city, and they like turn up. And so yeah, it was just really beautiful to be able to see this physical manifestation of all these people who were wishing me well and who wanted to celebrate me.
Any last minute advice for women that are maybe going through their heartbreak years, or are, you know, dealing with a relationship that's not necessarily serving them, or somebody that they're just a situationship that they just are in, you know, like just any words of advice or inspiration for readers?
Yeah, I mean, like I say in the book, if the worst problem in your life is a man, that's an easy problem to fix, you know? Like if you hate your job, if you've got cancer, like those are problems that are much more challenging to fix than breaking up with somebody and figuring something else out. But overall, I would also just tell people to like to give themselves grace. You know, this book is also largely about not having shame, not like allowing your experiences or your choices to make you feel ashamed, because we all have had these experiences. We all were given the wrong set of tools to try to navigate these early relationships with. And so you just really need to show yourself some grace.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Minda, for hanging out with me here at Lenox and Parker with Chapter and Verse. I've enjoyed this conversation. I definitely think there's some women and men out there that will definitely benefit from your wisdom and just enjoying your the experiences that you shared in this book. It's very brave to, so I think, be as vulnerable as you were, and enjoyed it, and look forward to more from you in the future.
Thank you. And thank you so much for taking the time to read the book and having me on Chapter and Verse. And if folks want to find me, they can visit me at mindahoney.com. I'm also at Minda Honey on Instagram. And I do a weekly newsletter called Writing for Fakers to help people overcome their imposter syndrome. And that's just newsletter.writingforfakers.com.
Awesome. We'll definitely include that on our website, Lenox and Parker, and we definitely would love to have you come back at another time to share more. Thank you so much, Minda.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. You can find more from this conversation on lenoxandparker.com, and we'll be back next month with another issue of Chapter and Verse. This is Chief Christal Jordan, editor-in-chief for Lenox and Parker, and I'll see you guys then.